I've spent a lot of time this week talking about the first 100 days of Donald Trump. But there is an opposition party that's out there, and I thought it would be worth doing the first 100 days report card, if you will, for the Democrats. Because as bad as things have gone for Donald Trump, this has not been a seesaw. As Trump goes down, Democrats go up. That has not been the case. In fact, the hallmark of all of the polling you've seen is even as Donald Trump's going down, the brand of the Democratic Party has yet to improve in the minds of voters. And arguably, that's a pretty honest assessment, right? What have the Democrats done to improve their brand? They really haven't done anything yet. If anything, they're still trying to figure it out. It isn't clear where this party is headed. What is universally clear, though, is that the D.C. leadership of the Democratic Party is not very popular at all, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. They're feeling some pressure. I've talked to some donors who are very frustrated with Jeffries, don't understand why Nancy Pelosi is still sort of lingering over the leadership of the House. As much, I had one prominent donor say to me over the weekend, I'm glad Nancy Pelosi was there to do what was needed to be done with Joe Biden's candidacy, but her shadow over the party is only hurting Jeffries in the long run and is only hurting the party's brand in the long run. If the party is going to try to gear itself to the future, its leadership of the previous 20 years probably needs to step aside completely. So that you certainly hear that. Obviously, Chuck Schumer has been feeling the heat. He's probably getting more of the arrows than most, considering he had to make a tough decision, which was whether to shut down the government or sort of let Donald Trump have a situation that wasn't going to be popular with the base of his party. I do think politically he made the right call. He just communicated the idea extraordinarily poorly, since he spent one day talking up the idea of orchestrating a shutdown and then immediately backtracking on that front. But his political calculus about what the right call was, I think, has turned out to be right, which is don't get in Donald Trump's way if he's in the middle of hurting himself politically. That's been the James Carville strategy. So I would say, if you were going to give grades, the DC leadership is not getting good grades. I don't think they're getting passing grades yet. Now the question is, who individually has had a good first 100 days in the Democratic Party? Well, probably the best way to judge that is you look at it through the prism of future elections and the prism of trying to position yourself as a leader or a player at the table, trying to figure out, what is the Democratic Party going to look like? What is the Democratic brand going to be? So immediately, when you look at people who have made an early effort to make an impression, Cory Booker, he certainly has decided to take matters more into his own hands. He did the 25-hour filibuster, which got a reasonable amount of attention. In fact, when he timed it, if you recall, I thought it was fascinating when he timed it. He timed it during the election and day of that first special election in April, which had the Wisconsin election and those two specials in Florida. So it was sort of feeding the Democratic base as they were getting excited about winning some of these special elections, overperforming in some of these special elections. And here he was sort of hijacking the DC message machine for a day. So I think, and over the weekend, Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries did a live stream from the Capitol steps. So I think Booker is trying to become one of, trying to find his voice as a Trump resistor. Another sort of DC insider that's trying that same thing is Chris Murphy, the Democratic senator from Connecticut. He's been trying to get on more socials, trying to sort of also become more of an outside voice in pushing the party. And clearly is probably somebody at least thinking about running for president. I think Cory Booker, fair to say that he's thinking about running for president. Other Democrats in the first 100 days. So I think for the most part, both Cory Booker and Chris Murphy, as far as their own standing, have made progress in where they're trying to get to. I don't know if they're the right answer. We're going to find out, right? Cory Booker could not get traction when he ran for president in 2020. Maybe that'll change this time, but some of the efforts he's making, you can see what he's doing, and it makes sense. Chris Murphy, same thing, gets a little less attention than Cory Booker, but you see what he's trying to do. It may be just the Washington baggage. I'm convinced that the Democratic primary electorate come 2027, 2028 is just going to care about two things, new and electable. Now, electable is going to be a debate, right? Everybody has a different version of who's electable and what's electable. But new, I think, is going to be a big deal, right? On the other first 100 days, Bernie Sanders and AOC. Obviously, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has probably had for her personal politics, a very strong first 100 days, right? She's already in line. There's no question anymore of who's the heir apparent to the Bernie movement. It is her. It is not going to be Ro Khanna. It is not going to be anybody else. It is going to be her. It is hers unless somehow she decides not to run for president. Now, she's got two options sitting in front of her in 2028. If she chooses not to run for president, she could run for a Chuck Schumer Senate seat. I'd be, as I told you in a previous, during the Dan Goldman preview there when I said keep an eye on him for the future. I believe, I don't believe Schumer ends up running for reelection by 2028, right? That just, you sort of see where that's going. And I think he could be vulnerable in a primary if he's not careful in 2028. I don't think that's the way he would want to go out. So I don't know this. Nobody knows this. He's certainly been a very successful New York politician. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he should know when the time to go is, but I certainly, if I were a betting man, and as many of you know, I do enjoy a FanDuel app every now and then. I certainly would be betting against him running for reelection in 28. So the question is, does she want to be a constant long-term player in D.C. or does she want to go for it and seeing if she can win the nomination? I'm skeptical she can win the nomination. I'm not sure. I go back to electability. Will she be able to pass the electability test, which is, again, very subjective, but I think the perception, and we'll see what the evidence shows, but I think she starts with a perception that she's going to have a hard time winning in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. But I'm going to just always be careful I'm not going to undersell her. She is what I like to describe as a very talented political athlete. And sometimes, you look at the NFL draft and you'll see somebody's got his arms are too short or he doesn't have big enough hands and all this stuff. But they're just so good at being a football player. They overcome whatever physical trait that they should have that they don't have. And so I feel the same way about politicians, is that, they can be such good campaigners. They can overcome, maybe it's a character flaw, maybe they overcome an ideological issue, whatever it is, that you can overcome these things if you're talented enough. So I'm hesitant to assume AOC can't overcome these things. I think she's proven to be a very talented politician. And I'm just watching her go from activist to elected activist to start trying to have more say, both figuring out how to balance inside game versus outside game. But overall, I think you could say AOC has had a very strong first 100 days because she now is certainly the one getting in front of crowds, whether they're Bernie generated, how much she's in charge of that, how much it's Bernie's operation. That's still a pretty strong first 100 days. Then there's Pete Buttigieg. His decision not to seek any office in Michigan, and he was contemplating. There are two open seats in Michigan, a Senate seat and a governor's seat. Of course, he's a new resident there. He moved there, changed his residency to Michigan from Indiana. He and his husband moved there. His husband's from Michigan. So the question was going to be whether he would seek statewide office in 26. And I think if he did, he was taking himself out of 28. If you're running for a new office in 26, I think it's hard to run in 28. If you're running for re-election in 26 to set up a run in 28, I think that's a different story. J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, appears to be on that track, although it's interesting to me that David Axelrod, who's an Illinois guy through and through, is a little skeptical about whether, if he wants to run for president, whether it's a good idea to also seek re-election, because Illinois might not be the as easy of a win for him as it has been in the past. But remember, he is a billionaire, the heir to the Hyatt fortune. So there is plenty of money there for J.B. Pritzker. So I don't, is he somebody that's had a good first 100 days? He's also somebody that wants to become the resistor on the gubernatorial side of things, more so than a Gretchen Whitmer, who's been seen working with Trump. Has she gotten too close to Trump? I think she certainly had the worst photo op moment of any Democrat in the first 100 days with the infamous folder over her face. And then look, if she wants to rise above partisanship, she can't keep apologizing for showing up at events with Republicans. That's a habit she's got to break if she really wants to rise above and say and be willing to go to places other Democrats aren't going to go. So far, essentially, she's done that twice now with Trump, but she's apologized. I didn't plan to speak, right? It's coming across as if like, please don't be mad at me, Democratic base, that I'm doing this. But hey, swing voters, look what I'm doing, right? You got to sort of project more confidence in that. So I think the ideas she's pursuing are good. How she's gone about them right now, I think could use some work. There's Gavin Newsom, who started a podcast in the first 100 days to try to break out of the stereotype San Francisco liberal narrative that I do think is going to haunt him for however long he wants to be in the national spotlight. There's no doubt he has ambition to run for president. I'm somebody who believes his best shot was primarying Biden when that talk was active and he decided not to. I think my guess is, if he ever, I always say this, the later in life, the more you age, you do start not worrying about the things that you did. You start wondering and regretting the things that you didn't do. I have a feeling Gavin Newsom forever is going to regret not primarying Biden in 24. That road not traveled will be one that he wonders what would have happened had he did. Would the entire party be in better shape? Would he be seen as a hero even if he didn't win? Who knows? But the extreme effort he's making to try to sort of left wingivize himself, right? De-progressivize him. I don't know what you want to call it that he's trying to do, but he's sort of like, I'm not sure how comfortable I am being a Democrat. He's sort of acknowledging the elephant in the room with people who, but is he also gone a little bit, is it a little too manufactured, right? Is it going to be, he's got to pass whatever, authenticity is another subjective word. You got to be authentic. Well, authentic to whom, right? But I get the overall idea. If it looks like you're trying too hard, voters will punish that as well. So I'd give him a mixed grade, A for effort. But I don't know if, just like I would with Gretchen Whitmer, A for effort, but I'm not quite sure if the execution's been as good as it could be. And then there's the people that I expect to be players in 28 that have decided not yet to raise their profile. Wes Moore, governor of Maryland. Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia. Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. Ruben Gallego, senator from Arizona. I was talking to a pollster earlier this week who said to me, when we were talking about the Wes Moore candidacy, because I think that's going to be, assuming he runs in 28, I think he will be the biggest establishment organization on the Democratic side. I think he'll have some of the biggest donors. He'll have, some of the big names around him and Buttigieg, I expect to be sort of the biggest traditional sort of campaign operations you have out there. But I had somebody ask me, it's like, if you're going to try to rerun Obama, be careful, right? It may be, especially now that Latino voters are the new swing voters of American politics, should the Democrats be looking for a Latino leader? And so just keep an eye on Ruben Gallego. He was pretty liberal as a member of the House, but he really has been trying to sort of recenter himself with a statewide Arizona electorate. He did, he got a little room to run because of who his opponent was in the Senate race, so that helped him a little bit. But he's still probably, he's been hewing very close to Mark Kelly here. I just keep an eye on him. I just think that there isn't a lot of Latino leaders that feel like they're on the cusp of putting together national campaigns that are not associated with an ideology. I have AOC, but I think she I don't know if she would have an automatic appeal to that swing voting working class Latino voter that may be voting more on some cultural issues that they're uncomfortable with on the progressive side. So it's something to watch there, and it's something that I'm curious about. So look, I think the Democratic brand is in the toilet, and all the polling, even after the first 100 days, shows you that it still is. Voters can believe two things at the same time. Trump's presidency is going horribly, and they haven't yet seen anything out of the Democrats that's appetizing. It's pretty clear the D.C. leadership is getting a failing grade. The DNC is mired in its own intra-party feud over David Hogg and primarying individuals, all of those things. The new DNC chair, I think, has had a hard time sort of establishing himself, frankly, yet. I think bogged down a bit by this David Hogg controversy and the fact that both Schumer and Jeffries have their own challenges being the official leadership of the Washington class of Democrats. And it's been fascinating. You do get the sense that a lot of Democrats have decided to take this branding issue and try to deal with it themselves. And I expect more of this. This is what happened to the Democrats after 1988, and this is what happened to the Democrats to a lesser extent after 2005 and 2004. So I expect more of this, and this is something about every when we're going to check in on the status of Trump and the MAGA, we're going to do this with the Democrats as well.